Okay, so you are an athlete.
Well, was.
What
Hold on.
you
Been a lot of months in the pandemic. I don't know if I'd qualify anymore, but yeah,
Yeah, 2020.
right.
Anyway, what is your take on like mental health within the world of like sports athletes? Did you get the support that you needed? Was it taken seriously in a way?
When I was growing up as a swimmer and as a rugby player and as, just as an athlete, there was this idea that athletes, were strong both mentally and physically. They could get through stuff. They were almost in a way superhuman because they could, not only balance school and sport and friends and life, but they could also persevere through hard workouts, tough times, and all of this, which is true. Except the other truth that was never highlighted when I was growing up was that athletes also struggle internally with their own demons
Right.
just as much as the next person.
Yeah.
And I never thought that. So, because no one had ever told me that. So growing up, I had these thoughts. I had these like negative thoughts of both myself and just life in general. But
Mm,
I never thought like other athletes were thinking that. I thought it was just me. And I was like, why am I so weak? So the stigma around, these athletes is that if you open up, not only are you weak, but you're going to get a lot of respect lost from both teammates and from competitors. They're going to look at you and go, that's the guy who has depression, target him. So it'd just be like these finger pointing, like
mm,
this finger pointing. And so that whole stigma kind of made me, and I'm sure a lot of other athletes, like athletes I've talked to and athletes out there, it makes you go, maybe I'm not going to open up because you don't want to lose that respect and you want to be viewed as like an athlete, a tough guy. Like you can still function as an athlete with these thoughts. It's just a matter of, working and living with them. It doesn't make you any less of an athlete if you have these feelings of depression. But that was just the mindset that was there when I was growing up. When I was really starting to get all these things figured out, I was a captain of the swim team at the time. And all the captains before me, they were all like super tough. They were like, let's do the work, let's be men, whatever. Which, I'm not trying to trash talk them. I'm just saying that was the mentality around the locker room. So because of that, I was like, if they find out I'm going to therapy, they're not going to respect me and they're not going to listen to what I have to tell them. What I didn't realize at the time, but I found out once I opened up because it got to a point where I was like, I got to be real with them because there were practices where I'd get out, I'd be punching stuff. I'm like, okay, I got to be honest.
yeah.
So I told them, and opening up actually made my teammates and my competitors respect me more. And
Mm,
kind of that bond was stronger between me and the people I was training with because I've mentioned this before. There's a couple different ways to lead a team
mm,
and lead people. One of the ways that I've found is the most receptive is when you're open and you're honest to the people you're a captain to. And I didn't think that was the case until I actually went out and did it.
mm,
So that bond was improved. And I think it really hit home kind of near the end of the season
mm.
because I had a terrible final season of swimming due to injury, due to, figuring myself out, all of this.
Yeah.
But the rookies at the time, they came up and they told me like how much I'd inspired them despite, going through all of this. And that kind of was a huge shifting moment when I realized you got to be open. And this whole stigma around how athletes can't be open is just a bunch of crap,
Mm.
for lack of a better term. That whole narrative needs to be shifted completely.
Sure. Well, yeah, and I mean, you could be like a, strong rugby player and still have fears and, things to panic about. Just as you could also be the really, tall little ballerina who has the same thoughts. So it
Mhm.
shouldn't matter what you do or where you come from. It's we all have those feelings. And the thing with depression and anxiety is that it doesn't show, it's not, a mark on your face. It's nothing that can easily be seen. Nobody can ever know, but it's
Mhm.
nothing that should be judged because it doesn't make anybody weak at all. And I'm
Right.
really, really happy that you saw that and that the people also saw that it took bravery to admit that and to be open, because I know that that can't be easy.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Do you personally feel like there is a difference, like when it comes to women with mental health issues and men with mental health issues, like in our society?
It's getting a lot better, but there's still that stigma where you're weak. That's going to come out whether you're a female or a male. It's just I don't think gender in that situation kind of matters. It's more like, oh, that person has depression, they're kind of weak and they're crazy and what have you. On the side of men's mental health, I do believe that there is like this toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
I have a couple more stories, but growing up as this kind of pertains to athletes as well, but growing up as a young swimmer, like the older guys,
Mhm.
if they had a bad race or they had a bad practice or they were just in a bad mood, they would go into the locker room and do the things I thought was how to cope. They would punch the lockers, bang their heads.
Mhm.
They were really mad. They'd be screaming like "fuck," and people kind of just brush that off as
Mhm.
being passionate. Like, oh, he's just passionate about his sport. He loves it. It was either that or he's a psychopath. And so that's kind of how I learned to cope with things, was through physical force. Because if I showed, crying, if I showed like, uh, hey guys, like I'm feeling really down right now, I was I was labeled as, lack of a better term again, I was labeled as a pussy. And so that's a huge word in the toxic masculinity conversation. So it kind of kept me bottled inside, which kind of led to more anger. We should continue pushing the narrative that, if you're a man and you're crying, that's not a weird thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you insane. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to be like, hey, I'm having a bad day. I don't understand why, even when I was growing up, why was that such a bad thing to have?
Yeah.
Why, like, when I would go to practice, I'd break down into tears. Why was that, instead of how can we help? Why was that more, oh, he's weak, let him do his thing. He's
Yeah.
got a weird brain problem. Why is that the reaction that we had to
Mhm.
go to?
But even
So I
the
think,
expression "man up," I mean,
right.
that's not fair, and
Mhm.
that's a lot of pressure on little boys who have the feelings. I want to cry. I want to, I'm having a breakdown here, and then this kind of constant brainwashing of don't show emotion, don't cry, crying makes you weak. That is a lot of pressure to bottle up inside and to hold to kind of keep inside. That's not okay.
I'll be the first to tell young boys that if you cry, that makes you just as much of a man as the next person.
I
It
love
takes a
that.
lot more courage
Yeah,
than people will give you credit for.
definitely. No, I love that. And I think that is definitely something that should be made very clear, that
Mhm.
having feelings, showing your feelings, showing your emotions, that's great. That's normal and that's natural. It's nothing that needs to be hidden, bottled up, or anything like that. Definitely.
Exactly. Exactly.
You must know because you're on social media, there is so much hate, and so many people are just there behind their screens attacking and throwing these terrible hateful comments, and that is difficult for anybody to take in. What is your advice for stuff like that, for people who want to be on social media, whatever the platform, and this kind of negativity that comes with it?
I was listening to a podcast yesterday.
Hmm.
Do you know who Sue Bird is?
No.
No, so she's a WNBA player in the United States.
Okay.
And I'm gonna butcher this story, but her girlfriend took a knee with Colin Kaepernick, like right
Okay.
at the beginning. And of course, she got a lot of
Mhm.
hateful comments and everything on social media. But what Sue was saying was there was only one person that came up and said it to her face.
Mhm.
So that you got to take every comment on social media with like a grain of salt, because the problem with these computers and these phones is that it gives these people confidence. Well, they, first of all, they can't see you when you read that. So they don't see your reaction. They can't mentally think that's not really going to affect them. That's what they're thinking. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt, because would those people say that to you to your face? I don't think so. I've had that problem. I've had someone not message me, but comment on one of my videos. I was talking about, Black mental health, and the stigma around it, and they wrote like this huge paragraph, just racist things, and just how I was a bad person for making the interview.
Oh, wow.
So at face value, like reading that at first, you get upset. Just seeing that, first of all, it was in all caps. It was really overwhelming, and it was in the morning. That was what I woke up to. I was like, oh, a comment, and then that. I was like, oh,
Oh,
wow. But if you read it, it was so evident that they hadn't even seen the episode. They just saw the title and they copy and pasted a comment. It was one of those people that probably copy and pasted so much that YouTube actually deleted the comment before I could respond.
really? Okay.
Because YouTube probably saw that and they're like, oh, this guy again.
Again.
So
Yeah.
right. So it is so hard to read things like that, and I get it because people can be nasty
Very.
when there's no limit to what they can say, and you don't see the other person. If you're receiving that, you just got to take it with a grain of salt and realize I know who I am and I know what I'm doing and I know the goal I'm trying to make. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel, but I'm not going to sit here and give you the energy that you're looking for.
I can imagine it is very hard, especially if it's on like a daily basis. It's hard to have that. It's constant, just draining the energy out of you. So,
Oh yeah.
and it's pathetic. It is
Mhm.
people who most of the time would never say it to your face, like you said, and it's just it's mean. Like why? Like
No.
you're taking. We only have 24 hours in a day. Like, and you are taking these minutes to just write hateful things. Like seriously, like get a life. It's
Right.
just.
Going away from, hateful comments targeted at you personally,
Mhm.
but if your feed is like a bunch of negativity, like hate and all
Yeah.
this stuff, you have the power to change that. You
Mhm.
have the power to choose who you follow, which hashtags you
Yeah,
follow, what's
absolutely.
on your explore. You're able to control what you see. And that's another suggestion I would tell people, because my Twitter was so bad and I don't know why, but it's just because the topics I was following, I guess, had a lot of hateful people in it.
Mhm.
Like they weren't even topics of hate. It was just like I was following, things about the pandemic, NBA, things like this. And I
Mhm.
guess for some reason it kind of my Twitter explore was all these people saying, "This sucks, you suck, like go die." And so I would open Twitter, I'm like, what is going on? So but you have the power to change that. You have the power to follow whoever you want, to see what you want. And I think that's the beautiful side of social media, is that you're able to just turn it off.
It's no secret that the year 2020 has been basically a shit show. Um,
Right.
I mean, I don't know where to start with lockdown, with basically COVID doing what it's been doing. It's very hard for people. It has been, and it continues to be hard for people who are in lockdown again, who just are kind of limited in their freedom. So, what would your advice be to kind of stay as sane as possible and kind of maintain a level of like calm
Mm.
during these difficult times?
Yeah, so I'm just as guilty as the next person, where the first couple months of COVID, I decided, I'm going to throw everything out the window and I'm just going to kind of sit back and let the world burn.
Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't have a job at the time. I wasn't really in, I had school, but it wasn't like, I think exams were right around the corner. I remember looking at my email, and my swim coach from back home did a daily update during COVID. And I remember the subject was day 100, and my brain like exploded and started freaking out. I was like, how are we still here? So the biggest thing I would tell people is have a schedule. And it doesn't have to be, you got to be like here at 9, you got to eat at 10. It doesn't have to be like that. If that's what you like, then go for it. I don't. What helped me was not scheduling that strict, but have an outline of what you want to do that day.
Plan, basically,
Like,
yeah.
right. So like, oh, in the morning, maybe I'll go for a jog. I'll
Mhm.
do some yoga halfway through the day. I'll watch a movie. I'll eat. Just having that little routine kind of get you back into normalcy. It's huge. Other than that, two key words that I wanted to really cover are conversation and community. Maybe not, you don't even have to converse about mental health specifically, or about how you're feeling. Every day, what I did is I would talk to either a family member or a friend. I would reach out and we'd have a conversation. I'd Zoom call my friends, we'd play like online games together, we'd do this. That kind of kept me a little sane as well, was, knowing not only that I'm not going through this alone, but that,
Mm.
my friends and family were there if I needed to just shoot a text, be like, hey, I'm down right now. Just knowing you have that community around you keeps you sane to some degree.
Mhm.
And then of course, I'm so guilty of this. So do as I say, not as I do. But having media breaks is so big, and this is my beef with the media. I'm just as addicted to social media as the next person, but the amount of negativity that is getting pumped out
Yeah,
is
it's pretty bad.
brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. Go down a wormhole when you're looking at these news articles, you're clicking them, you're reading them. Oh, what's related to this? Oh, more deaths. Oh, more, negativity. Oh, more this. It's great to stay updated with the world, but there's points where I just had this recently where it gets way too overwhelming and you don't really realize how big of a toll that takes on you. So just you're allowed to stay updated, but taking little breaks here and there and kind of get back into your own mind space as opposed to getting all this negative information fed to you,
I
um,
agree.
goes a long way.
No, it's true. There was a time as well, and I still do it from time to time. First thing I do in the morning is I read the news, and
Mhm.
I noticed it was not a good way to get the day going, because
Right.
you would see the numbers getting higher, you'd see more deaths, like you say. Plus, not only COVID related, I mean, there is a
Right.
lot of terrible things happening around the world with
All over.
attacks and just natural disasters. So yeah.
It's almost unfair to put your brain through that, because
Mm.
this is the other problem with social media, is that a lot of bad stuff was happening way before social media. The only thing is social media is bringing it to light. And that's great, but it's unrealistic to expect your brain to be able to handle all of that at
Yeah.
one time. You
Mm.
can't digest all of that all at once. It's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that I would encourage people to do, and something I would encourage myself to do a little more,
Mhm.
is take 10 minutes in the morning to just, first of all, wake up naturally and really get in the headspace of, I know what I have to do today, this, that, as opposed to the world's going to shit, I'm going to die, like all of this. So,
No, I agree. And I think so many of the things that we've talked about this far all kind of come down to control. And I feel
mhm,
like personally, and I know many other people feel the same way, is that 2020 makes us see that we have no control over
yeah,
anything. There's so much that we just can't control. First of all, that's unfortunately normal. We have to
mhm,
understand that we can't control everything in life. Understand that and take a step back to kind of calm down, find your safe space, kind of take moments for you to kind of, yeah, make sense of everything.
right, absolutely. Like there are things that, each individual person can control and like can contribute, obviously, when we're talking about like the racial divide that's going on and like the movements and everything, like
Yeah.
each person can contribute to that. And make a positive impact. But if we're talking about, I have no control of what the government wants to do for lockdown. It's a tough pill to swallow, but you just got to, first of all, focus on yourself and kind of just go with the punches, which I hate saying, but
But it's true. And also, we need to stop being too hard on ourselves, because
right.
I feel like there's so much pressure and so much stress and just tension because of what's going on. And then at the end of the day, we need to also remember that nobody's perfect. We're doing the best we can. And this is very much very relevant at the moment with all the things COVID related. Like it saddens me and sickens me to hear that people are still having these crazy parties with so many people. People are demonstrating against the mask, like saying, oh, you can't control if I wear a mask or not. That's terrifying, because we know
Mhm.
that the situation is getting worse. But then we have to also take a step back, take deep breaths, and remember we are doing the best we can. We are washing our hands, we wear our mask, we limit social contact, we keep the social distance. And at some point, that's the best that we can do.
Right, exactly. The main thing that I do right now is this show, and it's called the H panel.
Mhm.
And what I do is, I bring guests on from all different backgrounds, talk mental health,
Okay.
whether that be, what they specialize in, stories they have personally, and we kind of just talk about their experiences with it and how we can come together as a society to kind of normalize mental health and, the next steps. And my goal with it is kind of, when people come on with their own stories,
Yeah.
It's to show people watching, like, look, everyone goes through something. You're not alone, because that was my mentality growing up.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just trying to get that narrative out of there that you're alone in this and you're weird, because it's not true.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually I also have like personal stories and stuff that I put on there. I think it's on every podcast platform you can have. And then on YouTube, I'm just the mental corner. So that's where I kind of post the show as well. It's just kind of like it's a video of it. So
Super. Well, that's
yeah,
good. The links will be down below.
awesome.
No.
Can you stop? She just wants a bone. She's spoiled.
Harry, thank you so much for doing this. You are really an inspiration, and I'm so happy that there are people like you who talk about this because, like I said, it's so important. It's something that involves so many people, that is hurting so many people, that affects so many people on a daily basis, and it needs to be talked about. And you show the world that there's nothing to be ashamed of, and that it's nothing that makes you weak or bad or like tarnished. It's just an unfortunate part of life, and we need to talk about this more.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you for having me. I
Thank you
really
so much.
appreciate you giving me the time.
Of course. Thank you, Harry.